Sly Alec Guinness planning a heist. A race down the Eiffel Tower. A brief glimpse of young Audrey Hepburn. And writing worthy of an Oscar. They're all part of a crime caper, even hard to please Pauline Kael, called a charmer. Welcome to Walt's Flicks Picks. This time, something a little lighter. A first look at the magical world of Ealing Comedies with 1951's The Lavender Hill Mob. We'll take a quick look at the Ealings, the comic touch of Alec Guinness, the movie itself, and why it's fun to watch. One of the gems of the late British film industry was the Ealing Studios comedy series. Ealing was a production company that stopped making its own films before the 1960s, though others, such as the BBC, still used its facilities. But in its heyday, Ealing was known for a handful of timeless comedies made through the 1950s. Like a skillfully made soufflé, the Ealings were something special. Beautifully filmed, often in black and white, they had a deft and understated tone. The comedy was never broad or vulgar. However, the Ealings were also darkly subversive. Several were black comedies with heroes who were murderers, criminals, or self-absorbed eccentrics. Yet the characters are so sympathetic that we cheer them on. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the films were made when Britain's class system was still strongly in place. So the theme of the downtrodden, getting a little revenge, certainly had its appeal. The comedy started with Hue and Cry in 1947, about schoolboys confronting a gang, but the series really hit its stride 2 years later with Kind Hearts and Cornets. Dennis Price plays the movie's hero, a suave mass murderer. In the story, Price's character is badly treated by his snobby, aristocratic family. So, he starts killing off relatives to gain a lordship. The main gag here is that Alec Guinness plays all 8 victims of the murderer, both male and female. As an aside, it's interesting the Brits developed a strange taste for these serial killer comedies, as shown in later films like Theatre of Blood, the Dr. Phibes films, and Who's Killing the Great Chefs of Europe. Anyway, we'll look at the other Ealing films later, but let's take a look at the Lavender Hill Mob. As I touched on, at some point most people have felt underappreciated by a boss or a big organization, so it's fun to see a lowly underling get some revenge. That's certainly part of the hook in the Lavender Hill Mob. Made in 1951, the film follows Henry Holland. He's played by Alec Guinness, in a starring role that earned him a Best Actor nomination. Events open with Latin music playing as Holland sits in a ritzy bar in Rio. He's telling a story to a man while handing out wads of cash to waiters and friends. One of those friends is young Audrey Hepburn in her first role in a major movie. Stage work prevented Hepburn from getting a bigger part. She's only on screen for a moment, but it's fun to spot her at the start of her career. Recounting his story, Holland was a London bank employee, self-described as a mere non-entity. He's a quiet working stiff with a bowler hat, unassuming and proper, but with a half-smile that hides his darker ambitions. Holland's job is writing on gold shipments from a refinery to the Bank of England. And despite his respectable appearance, he admits that for 19 years he's been seeking a way to steal a shipment and get it away to Europe. Fate intervenes in the form of Mr. Pendlebury, the always likable Stanley Holloway, who moves into Holland's rooming house in Lavender Hill. As it happens, Pendlebury's line is molding cheap lead souvenirs, spraying them with gold-colored paint, and sending them around the world. Clearly, this is a match made in heaven. the pair quickly agree on a scheme to steal the bullion, melt it down, and then send real gold souvenirs to Europe, where they can sell it safely in the future. All that's needed for the heist now is some muscle to help them out. Ingeniously, they connect with two career crooks, gravel-voiced Sidney James, who gained fame in the Carry On films, and Alfie Bass. And now the mob is set. Meek Mr. Holland becomes the kingpin, and plans, what he hopes, is the perfect inside job. Now, the robbery happens fairly early on in the movie, as there must be time for inevitable complications that follow. But one of the highlights of the heist itself is watching Guinness tear his own clothes and grubby himself up to fit the role of an innocent victim. As mentioned, after the heist, things get tricky. We get the wild romp around the Eiffel Tower, a very correct schoolgirl, and a strange chase at a police museum. I'll let you discover how things come together when you enjoy the film itself. And one last point. Watching a heist film, fans know it's tradition for us to pull for the crooks planning a job, and that's doubly the case with Lavender Hill. In a movie that runs a very tight 78 minutes, Guinness and Holloway are so likable you keep cursing the cops and hoping that somehow they'll get away with it, right up to the sudden twist ending. If there is a flaw with Lavender Hill, it's that it's so short and well made that it leaves you wanting more. George Orrick's score is light, charming, and a touch bittersweet. Thomas Clark's funny screenplay captured an Academy Award for Best Writing. And director Charles Crichton showed a great touch for this kind of comedy. Nothing is too forced, nothing goes on too long. Later, he tried Hollywood as original director of The Birdman of Alcatraz, but he left after clashing with star Burt Lancaster. After that, he worked mainly in British television, until John Cleese lured him back to the movies at age 77. The result was Crichton's final film, and a monster hit, A Fish Called Wanda. Now, let's take a brief look at Alec the comic actor and some of his other Ealing films. These days, Alec Guinness is best known for his dramatic roles in things such as David Lean epics, one of which won him an Oscar for Bridge on the River Kwai, 2 spy miniseries, and famously as a Jedi Knight. So it's easy to overlook that earlier Guinness starred in several comic films, and the best of those for Ealing Studios. After Lavender Hill and Kind Hearts and Cornets, Guinness was in the popular The Man in the White Suit. This time, he's a self-absorbed scientist whose new fabric may derail the world's textiles industries. A few years later, Guinness turned to crime again in the highly rated Lady Killers, this time playing a less appealing gang leader. He was featured in other films with a similar style, but made by other studios. He starred in The Promoter, which dealt with rising above your class. In Captain's Paradise, he was a sailor with 2 wives. And, in The Horse's Mouth, he became eccentric artist Gully Jimson. Of course, in none of these films did Guinness ever do jokes or play for laughs. That was never his style. He merely stayed true to his character, and the humor rose, naturally, from the events around him. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that quick look at the Ealings. I invite you to comment about these kinds of films and subscribe. And also I want to say a real special thanks to everybody who has subscribed. It's really gratifying to get this kind of support and to know there are other people who care about these kinds of movies and support what I'm doing. So again, thanks for being here, and I hope to welcome you back again soon to Waltz, Flicks, Picks.